Listening online and those here present in City Hall, this is High Point Mayor Jay Wagner calling to order our regular council meeting for Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. First meeting in the new year. I want to thank everybody for coming out. For those listening online, I'd like to state that we do have a quorum present. All members of council are present here at City Hall. And before we get to our main parts of our agenda, I would ask everyone to rise for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so we have a couple of recognitions before we get into our main agenda. The first one is 35 years of celebrating 35 years of service for Keep High Point Beautiful.
Hi, how are you?
Hello.
Good evening. So thank you so much for having us this evening. I just wanted to recognize some people here in the audience tonight that basically they are the backbone. As a community, when we come together and we make things happen, whether it's removing litter, planting trees, and doing all sorts of things to make our environment better, it takes a lot of people. But sometimes there's a core group that gives of their time and gives of themselves to make things happen. And so I wanted to recognize those folks tonight. But I do just want to share with you that over 35 years, and I have some statistics for you, but they only go back as far as my tenure with this, and that's approximately 11 years. And so over that time, we've picked up over 440,000 pounds of trash. We've planted hundreds of trees. We've planted over 80 trees, thousands of flowers, and we're just going to continue to keep growing and doing, and so that High Point can continue to be such a wonderful city that it is. So if I could ask, first I would like to recognize, Keep High Point Beautiful is 35 years old, and so it started a while back, and one of the people who helped kick it off and helped lead it at the beginning is now the leader for growing High Point, and that's Willa Mays. So Willa, if you don't mind standing for just a moment, thank you for your work. I also want to recognize, absolutely. I also want to recognize Melanie Bruton. She also, for many years, led the Keep High Point Beautiful program. So Melanie, would you stand, and thank you for your work. I'd also like to recognize someone who, of his own will and just love for water as a fisherman, Bill Frazier, if you would please stand. Bill led multiple cleanups to take care of our waters here in our city. And of course, last but not least, I would love to recognize the board members, which includes Youth Council. This year we have the largest council that we've ever had for our youth. That's 13 teenagers. They're not all here tonight, but I would just like to say that when I see so many young people doing things like this, it just encourages me that our future is in good hands. And so if I could have all the board rise and stand, and I'd just love to give them a hand. Sure, that would be wonderful. And if all of you could come up front, we're going to get a quick picture. While they make their way to the front, I would like to say we're also an unusual board in another way. We don't rotate off. So what that means is there are people on this board that have been helping for 10 years, 8 years, Possibly, a couple are newer, but these folks have been committed for a long time. And so, I'm very thankful.
B city will be in the middle of the agenda, so it's okay if we wait on that one. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, council members. We really appreciate your continued support.
Thank you. Okay. Next item on the agenda is I'm going to recognize the High Point Human Relations Commission for the presentation of our Humanitarian Award of the Year. Humanitarian of the Year Award. I get that right.
Distinguished Mayor and City Council members, my name is Grace McCrae. I'm the Human Relations Manager. At this time, we'd like to present the award for the 2022 City of High Point Humanitarian of the Year. Selected by the Human Relations Commission, this award honors a High Point resident who has made a significant contribution to promoting understanding, respect, equity, and goodwill among all residents. Tonight, the award winner will be introduced to you by Sharon McGregor, the new chair of the Human Relations Commission. Chair McGregor was elected at our HRC retreat last week, so she's a little new to her duties. And we also developed that last week, our 2023 work plan, which will be shared with you at a future council meeting. Chair McGregor.
Good evening, Mayor Wagner, City Manager Ms. Logan Ford, and esteemed council members. My name is Sharon McGregor again, and as the new chair of the High Point Human Relations Commission, it is my great pleasure to introduce you to Reverend Robert Williams. His outstanding service to our city and its residents is being celebrated tonight by the commission. Reverend Williams is the pastor of Williams Memorial CME Church, a position he's held for almost unbelievably 50 years. He is an inspiring church leader and devoted husband and father, and in every aspect of his life, he is a model of compassion, love, and care for others. Tonight, we recognize the amazing work he and Williams Memorial have done this past year and every year across High Point. For example, Reverend Williams recently organized a hugely impactful pop-up dental clinic offering free dental services to those who could not otherwise afford it. In total, more than 600 people from as far away as Georgia traveled to High Point to receive this absolutely essential care. As well, this past Thanksgiving, Reverend Williams oversaw the 12th annual operation of what is surely the largest community meal in High Point. How big is that? All right? Including all their deliveries across the city. Williams Memorial provides Thanksgiving to over 10,000 people, and all this in addition to the church's regular mission of delivering weekly hot meals to High Point residents who are experiencing homelessness. As a personal note, and as a member of Williams Memorial, I can say with conviction that we are all very blessed to have him as our spiritual leader and friend. I cannot think of anyone else who deserves this accolade to be bestowed upon more than Pastor Williams. He has worked tirelessly over the last 50 years, intentionally, to make a difference in his community. His legacy will continue to shine because of the amazing man he is. He is a true example of the quote, "Work hard in silence, let success make the noise." Through good works like these, Reverend Williams is making our city a better place to live. Therefore, as nominated by Benita Sims, in recognition of the many ways he has gone above and beyond to increase equitable access to food, housing, and essential health care, tonight, I am proud to present him with the Human Relations Commission's 2022 Humanitarian Year Award. Now, before we present the award, Mayor Wagner would like to say a few words.
Reverend Williams, what you and your congregation have done for our city, for the people of our city, is immeasurable. And I want to commend you for that and commend your congregation for that. Although, I don't know what the saying is, I guess, but the quarterback gets the credit, but also all the blame, you know? And so, you know, I'm not going to sit here and recount everything that they've said, but what you have done and what you have led your congregation to do is truly amazing. And High Point is a much, much better city for that. So in addition to you receiving the Humanitarian of the Year award, I would also like to take this opportunity to present you with the key to the city. You don't run out of hands for all these awards. Let's get in front of it.
Ready? 1, 2, 3.
I keep getting shocked. Let me, thank you. I want to give honor to God tonight for the many blessings He's bestowed upon me. And I want to thank you for selecting me to receive this humanitarian award and the key to the city. I can open some doors now. I'm very honored to receive this prestigious award. I want to thank you, the Human Relations Commission, the City of High Point Council, for bestowing these honors upon me. And I want to thank Benita Sims for her nominating me. I would be amiss if I did not recognize my wife for 51 years. She's not able to be with me tonight. My family, my daughter's here. Where are you, baby? There you go, my baby. My church family, where are my church family? My friends of High Point, my preacher friends, the brothers of Phi Beta Sigma, who have supported me through the years. Jesus said that when you do it to the least of these, you do it unto me. And I want to make sure that I will live out the calling which is on my life from God, to serve Him and to make His name known. I feel very blessed and honored that you have bestowed this honor upon me. If you have seen the video when they announced that I was named the Humanitarian of High Point Award by Councilman Williams, I was shocked and taken back. just as I was to receive the key tonight. Everything seems so surreal at this time, and I'm still processing it, thinking to myself of all the things that I would like to see done. Reverend Dr. Jawan Dow preached on our MLL service on last night that there are some trees that need to be climbed. And I want to climb some trees. There are challenges that are before me, doors that need to be opened, gaps that need to be narrowed, and people that need to be helped. My prayer is that God would give me the strength, vision, and endurance to do the things that He's called me to do. It is my desire to continue to work for the good of humankind. Thanks again for bestowing this award upon me. God bless you all.
Okay. Next on our agenda is our strategic plan update. I will first recognize Councilmember Chris Williams for an update regarding our blight reduction strategy. What?
We don't have anything to report.
You don't have anything? Okay. That's a good update.
Yeah, it's kind of good.
Councilman Holmes, would you like to update us on our marketing efforts?
I would, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Civic Brand has completed their compilation of the information that we collected during the information periods, our pop-up surveys, all those things have been collected. They've put this into a brand strategy that they're going to present to our staff. And then once we agree on those ideas, we'll share it with our key stakeholders and begin the design process around that strategy. And then at that point, we'll be able to say that possibly we'll bring it to council sometimes around April. So it's coming to a close, getting close.
Sounds good. All right. Next on the agenda is the public comment period. There's a couple of folks who've signed up to speak during public comment. If you did not get an opportunity to speak, you'll have the opportunity after these two folks are called on. When your name is called, or if you'd like to speak, please come forward to the lectern, give us your name and your address for our record. And you'll have 3 minutes to speak on any item that is not a public hearing item, okay? If it's a public hearing item, you're going to get a chance to speak later on that specific item. So, first one is Elizabeth Birch. Is she here? Going once. Elizabeth Birch. Okay. All right. Mr. Irby, I think you're actually on here for one of the.
I am.
You want to just hold off then?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Is there anyone else who would like to speak during public comment? Yes, sir.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. I'm Reverend Frank Thomas. I pastor Mount Zion Baptist Church on 753 Washington Street. In the words of a song that I hear often in the church, I said I wasn't going to tell nobody, but I just couldn't keep it to myself. I came tonight to support Reverend Williams, and I had not planned to speak tonight, but I'm reminded of a phone call I had with a young lady who had been evicted and was looking for a place to stay, and said she had reached out to several landlords, but when they found out she was on Section 8, they turned her down because, as you know, Section 8 only pays part of the rent. And I know it's been a while since I was here to speak about fair housing, but I just can't keep it to myself. There are people in this city who are being discriminated against every day for several reasons, and because of that, they don't have adequate housing. I stand here today because I just couldn't keep it to myself. I continue to ask those of you who have not supported the Fair Housing Ordinance to reconsider and think for a moment about all the people who have been impacted by the lack of fair housing in this city. And I think it would be a travesty for them to have to wait a whole another year before this can be brought back to council's agenda. All I'm asking is that you reconsider and reopen it to have a fruitful, meaningful, maybe even passionate discussion to ensure that all of our citizens are being treated fairly and not discriminated against for any reason that would cause them not to have adequate housing. God bless you. Have a great evening.
Thank you, Reverend Thomas. Anyone else like to speak during public comment?
Hello, my name is Corey Eidlet.
I'm Alan George.
And I'm Stephanie Pramis, and we're here representing the Friendship Table. Can everyone hear me? I'm kind of short, okay. We're representing the Friendship Table. We are living together in a home at 1803 Welburn Street in High Point, and we are a group that's coming out of St. Mary's Episcopal Church, also located in High Point. I saw that Willa was here earlier. I think she may have left, but we actually are working primarily with Growing High Point, and our mission is to tackle and do what we can to help tackle, I should say, food insecurity within the High Point community. So we are very humbled and very honored to be here, and thank you, Monica, for inviting us here today. And we just wanted to introduce ourselves, and we look forward to serving this community and doing everything that we can with you all. I just have to say, it's been amazing to be here and meet so many amazing, passionate people. I'm new to High Point myself, we all are actually, and we've all just been very, very humbled and inspired by the people that we've met just in the short time that we've been here. So thank you all.
Thank you.
This is a more personal comment. This is the only city I've been in that I've liked.
Changing the motto.
If I can just make one comment real quick. To Stephanie, Alan, Corey, thank y'all for coming tonight. It was so great meeting y'all and hearing your passion for our city and the philanthropic stuff that you're bringing to the table and helping us with food insecurities and your energy. I just love it. Thank you for coming tonight, and thank you for calling High Point home. Absolutely.
And I would just like to add that you probably will end up in our marketing campaign.
Okay. Anyone else? Last call for public comment. Okay.
So I'm not kind of short, I'm just kind of old. I had to put my glasses on. I hope I didn't hear, here she go again about this doggone school. Okay. I am Dr. Kelly Jackson of 3415 Langdale Drive. I am grateful for the privilege to speak tonight. I'm grateful for everyone on the City Council. A special thanks to Mayor Wagner and Councilman Jefferson and Mr. Councilman Johnson for your ongoing support with my endeavors of starting my school. I would only ask to be included when determining what to do with the old High Point Police Department. If I can attend some of the meetings where you're determining what to do with it, or receive an email, or just keep me in your thoughts when you're, deciding what to do with that property. The state has given me the go-ahead to start the school, and they've asked me about a facility, and I have a lot of things, you know, to get in order. I would just like to end with this. I'm a teacher. A teacher is someone who leads. There's no magic here. I do not walk on water. I do not part the sea. I just love children. That was by my favorite, Marva Collins. Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Jackson. Okay, anyone else? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public comment period. We will proceed on to our Finance Committee agenda, and I will recognize Councilman Britt Moore, who chairs that committee.
Thank you, Mayor Wagner. Council members, there's two parts to finance tonight. The first part is the agenda under consent items that was in your package, and I'm sure you have reviewed. So I will move the consent agenda forward with a favorable recommendation.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for the approval of the Finance Committee consent agenda items. Is there any discussion? Okay.
The next item is that.
Wait a minute. Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. All right.
Sorry, Mayor, got in front of you. I would like to entertain a motion to pull item 2022-590 out of pending for consideration.
So moved. Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to pull item 2022-590 out of pending and place it for consideration.
Item 2022-590 is from.
Oh, yeah, see, it can happen to anybody, right? All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion passes. It's out of pending.
Don't follow my lead, Mayor.
It's catching, it's contagious.
Item 2022-590 is the One High Point Commission budget ordinance and date extension request. I think we're all familiar with this. This council need to hear presentation from Jerron just to make sure we're clear. I would welcome that if he would.
Could I ask, can we separate the two items, or are they?
I think what will happen is we'll separate them at the vote.
Okay.
Yep.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Jerron Hollis, Managing Director for City of High Point. What you have in front of you is a budget ordinance amendment that was originally considered at the last council meeting. This includes a budget request that is coming from the One High Point Commission, as well as a request for a date extension to finish the work and return the report and the resolution that council asks for. I'd be glad to entertain any questions, but this is for your consideration at this time, having been first discussed at the last meeting.
Mr. Hollis, please confirm for us what the current deadline is.
The current deadline that's in the resolution, I believe, is June 2nd. June 2nd.
Anyone have questions before we proceed? Okay. More?
Thank you. So we'll take these one at a time. The first item, number one, is a budget ordinance amendment in the amount of $45,000. This is to go for, to confirm if I'm wrong, Jerron, I believe 5,000 is for community outreach, 20,000 is for project manager, and 20,000 is for expert research that's
Subject matter experts.
being
Yes, sir.
brought in. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That is the ask, and I will make a recommendation for approval.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second for approval of this item. Any discussion?
I have a few comments, if I may. When this commission was formed, I believe their goal and the intention is good, and I think the purpose is good. I was one who felt like that us here before you as elected officials would have maybe worked in a different business model than the one that was approved by council. In as such, as it's gone forward, I have learned several things. Some of my beliefs have been reaffirmed and strengthened. And I know that we all come from our own space and time and our own context to discussions like this. It's a very challenging topic. But I've always felt, since I've become an adult, very, very fortunate to have been born in High Point. And as I've traveled the world at different times, that's got even stronger. As the gentleman alluded earlier, he's found it's the only city he likes. Not been a perfect city, but we stand on the shoulders of an incredible history, both socially and economically. I stopped by today to see the February 1st plaque memorial behind Old Radisson. Are y'all familiar with that? If you're not, I encourage you to either Google search it or go by and look at it and read it. If you equate that to when I was born, before you go to the next 22 years until the human brain supposedly develops and you know something, you'll see that in the 60s, the early 60s, and 1960, that I and my generation have been fortunate to have had those that fought the tough challenges for a lot of positive movement amongst our communities, not only here, but across the country. So I think this can get us further down the road, and I would hope that at the end of my time, I've helped move the pendulum forward instead of either leaving it still or moving it backwards. So that's why I have changed on the finance part. Make no mistake, I feel like this amount of money and the way we view money today is not, it doesn't sit with my mind the way I was raised or see it. Especially when you think of people in their 30s, 40s, or younger who have lived under the truth that we federally just print money. It just shows up. I feel like this amount of money could have been raised pretty easily in the private sector without having to come to the public sector. With that being said, I feel like that the discussion and the answers that are being requested are important enough to me that I will agree to vote favorably for this recommendation.
Would anyone else like to be heard?
So I'm reading through this, so are we still?
Well, there's no motion on the floor right now.
Okay.
There was a motion by.
Well, that's right, I'm sorry, you're right. There's a motion to approve the 45,000.
I will second.
We're not to the date.
We're not on the date part?
No.
Just approval of the budget ordinance amendment.
And I'll second that, Mr. Mayor.
That's right. Okay. Anyone else like to be
I will
heard?
state that I've spoken to a few members of council about this, and I know that there's all different schools of thoughts out in the community about these topics or whatever, but there have been times in my life where I've had to pay a certain amount of money to get an estimate to find out if I got a problem or not, and I pay it. And I feel like this committee is committed to getting us real data, real things that we can look at, and I'm as conservative as they come and spend money, but to what Council Moore said, I think it's worth making sure we don't leave any stone unturned, and that I will support it, because I feel like we need to at least get those answers, get that information. So.
Anyone else? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed?
No.
Okay, that motion passes by a vote of, I believe it was 7-2. Okay, Mr. Moore.
Second part of this request is for an extension of the date for the presentation of recommendations to council from the current date of June the 2nd, 2023 deadline to January 17th of 2024. And I'll entertain a motion on that.
Could we, can we get a clarification on the second vote for the clerks? The two that were no? Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor and Chairman Moore, I make a motion to approve the recommendation for the request of an extension.
A second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to approve the extension. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. In light of the timelines that we are facing with this being an election year, and also the potential that this will cross over into another council, I feel like the work that this council has done and this commission has done, it needs continuity. So I would like to make a motion that rather than extending it until the January deadline, which will cross over into a new council, that we look at the only meeting in September. I think that's the September 18th meeting. I think if we get, since the budget has been passed, and we can get our subject matter experts in process now, I think the additional 3 months, along with staff and the work that's been done, could be sufficient to deliver those to this council. And also, any suggestions that come before that will also give us time to enact any solutions as we work in concert with the commission. I don't want to hand this over to a council that could be radically different and lose the momentum that we've gained with the commission's work.
I second that substitute motion.
Okay, so we have a substitute motion to extend the time to September the 18th. We'll vote on that substitute motion first. Does anyone have any comment on the substitute motion?
Mayor Wagner, I'd be curious about the substitute motion. We get the recommendations back in September, and to your point, Councilman Holmes, about being able to act on that during this iteration of council, I'd find it highly unlikely that we get recommendations back in September and act on anything between September and November.
Well,
I think regardless of like what year it is, I think you're asking for a 60-day turnaround. And so I admittedly, if there's going to be an extension, what I'm really curious to hear is from, I know there's staff and there's a number of commissioners who are here who have been involved in that work. This is my first time hearing about a 3-month as opposed to I think this other one goes from June to January, so it's 7 months. I'd be curious to know, with the extension that we identified originally, what are we cutting short to not get this process right? That if you're going to invest that money, the $45K that we just all voted to approve just about, and we want to make sure we do it the right way, for the point of wanting to get it done in 3 months, with the hope that you act on it within 60 days before changing of the guard, just none of that seems feasible to me. If I were forecasting anything here, even if we approve an extension into September, that this body is not going to vote on anything on those recommendations before November or before December. That, to me, that sounds highly unlikely. Not that we won't want to take action on things, but for whatever considerations there are regarding any restorative economic policies that we talked about, or some of the stuff we talked about with transportation and infrastructure, just some of that stuff when those recommendations come back, I mean, it's going to take amount of studying the feasibility of that by city management and staff. And so part of it is, if we're going to give the $45K for a just due in terms of doing this right, to the point that Councilman Jones and Chairman Moore just made about this, right? If we're going to do it and do it right, I think that trying to rush it into a 3-month standstill with the idea that we then pass something 60 days in that is completely unfeasible. And if I'm understanding it differently, I love to hear from some commission members. I recognize you two are on the commission. I recognize Chairman Austin's also here from the commission. I know some staff members are here from that. I'm also curious to hear from our city manager and her team that if we get recommendations back in September, how feasible is it that we pass anything by November?
Yes, Councilman Jefferson. Before, and I'll also defer to staff, my thinking is that this is not a singular motion. This is not necessarily a singular package that we would have to work on once the recommendations that are there. The subject matter experts will approach this in the topics that were defined in the commission. They can return recommendations to us at any point during the time they begin their work and the time that they deliver the final report out. So to your point, yes, any studies that will happen not just in this council but the next, but the report will be completed in its entirety. Now, if there are policies that we can enact in between the time that we commission the subject matter experts and the time of September when they deliver that we've made in the substitute motion, then council can act on those. They can deliver that to us. We can vote on those individually, but the final report itself can be delivered so that this council will have time to deliver a final product to whatever the next iteration of council may be. And so it will be fully and intact rather than delivering this with no backstory or little information to a brand new council. My concern is that even if this council is radically different, if this work is then delivered, you've lost some continuity. But I'm open to any interpretation or any additional information from staff. City manager, please enter the debate.
If I can, just as a reminder, plus when I looked at some of the suggestions and some of the work that came out of the commission, it is in line with some of the work that we've already done. So when you're talking about something that's applicable with this body, I think we've already taken some steps in that direction. The other part was when we voted to formulate, to support the forming of this commission, we did agree that it would be with this body and not the next. I'm just, it's just keeping in what we agreed to at the beginning. We haven't had anything, at least to my knowledge, that came up that would change that mindset or that thought. Like I said, I thought they put in plenty of work. They've done a lot of good work. And then the suggestions that come out is I think I said is applicable to what we can do now, plus every step that our Councilman Holmes has already discussed.
So perhaps I'm confused. Can I get clarification why January 17th was requested originally then? Because if it was always fine to come out by September, I don't imagine why we requested January in the first place. My point is that if folks asked for January, there must have been something we expected to get done in that additional 4 months.
I thought that was when the sundown for the commission was. It was just a date of ending that commission. Is that not what it was?
June 2nd.
June 2nd.
June 2nd, like of this year, was ending the commission.
Was the original
And now
1 year deadline.
the request is to push for this to be done next January. Substitute motion is for it to be done now, earlier. And I'm trying to get an understanding of the original request for it to be pushed to January, because if that's no longer a valid reason for it to have been pushed to January, then that's the only thing that validates moving it up to September.
There were some findings in the commission, and also during that discovery period, we realized that some of the information and some of the subject matter experts that were needed, we did not have. And so this prompted the request for the extension. And also, we did have to formulate, we began with no budget. So part of that discovery period was the formulation of a budget, which we've now crafted. And so several months of debate about the budget has led us to a point where we lost, not necessarily lost, but we were not able to maximize some of the initial period of the commission. And so that prompted the extension. I believe now with the passage of the budget and the implementation of the subject matter experts, that we are able to now, if we have an additional 3 months, that I believe we can still deliver it within this year and not take it into a new council.
I'm sorry, I don't know if that answered my question. I'm very curious. We set an extension that came from you all's commission to extend 7 months. And now I'm hearing that we don't need 7 months. All we need is an additional 3. what was the request for that additional 7 months for? Like, I know you just said what the extension was, but in my mind, we're running the risk of cutting that back by 4 months, and that's 4 months of time that we could have been spent making sure we have all of our ducks in a row. I think the other thing that's very true to me is wanting the report done before this iteration of council is gone, so that way we can hand a report over to a new council in December of that year. There's no different in that report being done in January and the report being handed to them then. That new council, is there a fear that new council is going to come in December and shut down the commission of December of this year? Like that's not going to happen. There's a resolution for it to go into January next year, a radical council. Maybe I'm missing something. Forgive me for being as transparent as I'm being here. I'm just not understanding what we mean by a new iteration of council is going to shut down some report.
No, it was never about shutting down the council. It was about the continuity of the work and the curve of bringing new council members on. And also to Councilman Williams' point, we did agree that it would be delivered within this body of council. So if we're pushing it into January, we're not meeting that. We're not meeting that.
So, yeah, Councilman Johnson.
So even if we extend it by that time and it's finished by September, would that be a problem?
In terms of what?
Because they can present it, the commission can come and present everything that, let's say it's done by September. They can come and present it in September, okay? And their work is done, am I correct?
Correct.
So what would be the problem? Am I missing something?
You're saying what's the problem with having a deadline?
If we would extend it, but finish it in September, because I do understand, we did originally say we wanted to end it, or we wanted it with this council. So I get that. And I want that also, okay? This council started, and I would love for the commission to present it to this council. So if that can be done by September, well, let's just say something would happen by September and it's not done. We still have that extra time. But on the flip side, if it is done, then it could be presented in September.
Yeah, I mean, I like that idea better of not handcuffing them to September, because if we get to September and have to request another extension, we're just gonna have this debate all over again. I honestly don't see the harm in allowing the request to go to January. We've got stomach for it to go to January. We're not running a risk of like another council, like however it lands out, whatever council's in here in December, whether they get the report when they swear in on December 1st or they get the report January 17th, it's still going to start at the start of their tenure. It's going to be a new report for a new council. So we set the agreement, the extension for January, and if they get it done in September, great, you get it done in September. That would be awesome, but we're handcuffing it, trying to cut it back down to September.
My feeling on this is that, the original plan was to have it done in a year. For whatever reason, we're hearing from the commission that it's not going to be done in a year. I have a lot of heartburn over the idea that we created this commission, this body voted to create the commission, and then we're being asked essentially to hand it off to the next council and never have to deal with the result of the commission. And so I don't want the next council, whoever they may be, none of the 9 of us may be sitting here, I don't know, but whoever that next council may be, I don't think it's fair to that next council for the first thing to land in their lap to be the results of the work of this commission. And I just think to me, it just doesn't look right for us to create this commission and then never see the results of what we've created and pass it on to the next council. I think we owe a duty to our citizens because this commission was created under this council, and I think we owe a duty to our citizens to be the ones to deal with the results of the commission.
Very good points.
So for for me, September is much better. Technically, our work is not done until the first meeting in December. So we have, we're going to have 2.5 full months to deal with it. And I do trust that we're going to learn a lot of what's going to be coming out of this commission in advance. Some things we may be able to deal with ahead of time as they come out. I just can't support going to January because I just don't support us creating something and then burdening the next council with it. I think we created it, and I think we have to weigh in on it.
Well,
Mayor, that's a good point. The nature of government is that we always create something that the next body of government takes on.
I hear you.
Whether it was what you all created with downtown that 3 different councils have led, or blight reduction that 3 different councils have led, or some of the other issues that we're just dealing with across the whole city. Every iteration of government always picks up the mantle for what the next ones do. I think the other point that's very clear to me is that a report coming out in September to say we don't want to have that be the first thing that they get. If the report comes out in September and they get in office in December, it's going to be the first thing they get. I don't know what we're anticipating doing in September, October, November. I think the other point that we may do something in September, October, November to enact these recommendations is to say that we may very well vote on something in October and November, which would be the fastest thing we've ever voted on. Just to be very clear, y'all, I have to be honest with my peers here. That's the fastest we've ever voted on anything. To assume that we would vote on something in October and November, we then be voting on something that we would just hand right over to the next council. So the whole point here is that government is constantly working for future iterations of government to pick up the mantle. And all I'm saying is there is no harm in that deadline being in January, because to be clear here, the next iteration of council will have to pick up this work. And if we finish the report in September, that does not stop that iteration of council from saying in December, we get the report and we're not doing anything with it. Like this reality and feasibility of us doing something in September, October, November, I just don't see it as a good enough reason to try to restrict it back to September. Also, I request, Mayor, to hear from Chairman of the Commission on this, because this is my first time hearing this. Everything I heard on this was that we were going 7 months. So I request to hear from the Chairman of the Commission who's here.
May I make a comment, please?
Yes.
So I just want to say that based on what all I'm listening to, I agree with both sides. I understand both sides. I really do, Cyril. I understand what the mayor's saying too. We need to remember that, like, if the report is due, by the end of September, we do have time that we can make policy changes, which is basically the whole thing that we're hoping that's going to come out of this is to change policy, so that the policy that we create or change helps reduce any things that continue that show challenges for some folks. The other thing I want to say is that once a new council is put in place, they would have the right to reestablish the commission. There's no saying that they can't say, okay, we want to reestablish the commission for another year. I mean, so I understand both sides, but I do kind of feel that the September date will give us time to really make sure that we can be the policy change makers, that if we can make a difference, then we have the ability to do. So that's how I kind of see that.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yes.
I think we've had two conversations. One is about the study from the commission that we said would take 1 year. And there's a separate conversation is what do we do with that study? And so all we're saying is we want the results. What I'm hearing is, which I agree with, I would like the results of that study before the next council takes office. I think the results from this, depending on what the studies show, will affect the next council, and maybe 2 or 3 councils. All right, there's nothing we're going to be able to do is going to fix anything by the end of the year, right? The point is, and to Councilman Jefferson, I see what you're saying too. I don't think if we back it up to September, they're going to get something to us, and all of a sudden we make 2 or 3 policy changes and we're like, end of story, let's put a bow on it. I think that we've been gracious. We approved the financials. We're saying here's a few more months to get it back to us, but I don't feel right passing on this to the next council either. So the fact of whether or not we have enough time to do anything or not, I think it's fairly irrelevant. I feel like the next council will probably continue whatever we do based on this study that we were smart enough to approve in some ways and get this information and see what it shows. So for that reason, I agree with your motion, Councilor Holmes, that let's get this study done in our term and then see what we decide to do with it. And then we pass the baton to the next council, see what they decide to do with it.
I have another thought, please, if y'all, okay, so, because I'm really trying to understand both sides. And, you know, like what Councilmember Johnson said, if the study's done sooner, they can submit it. So by making them have to have it done sooner, it could jeopardize the extent of the study. I mean, the request was till January of 2024.
Originally it was June.
Right, well, you know what we went through.
I got it.
There's lots of times, just FYI, that we extend things that none of us really want to. So that being said, I don't know if I kind of feel that maybe Councilmember Jefferson's right. I mean, we're not going to have enough time to enact on it. And like Councilman Holmes said, whoever's going to be running for re-election, we're going to be so busy doing that because it is an election year that there's not too much we're going to be able to do in 2 months. So I understand that too. So maybe it's better for us, because it's an election year, to just let's do it for the January. So I can go.
If we don't go, if we extend the September date until then, the council that created the commission will have opportunity to comment on the results that come out of the commission they created. If we extend till January of 2024, those of us who are not up here next time do not have a voice in the results of what we created. Now, to Mr. Jefferson's point, governments do get into things, capital projects, policy projects that take time, that go into new councils, a new mantle picked up. That's correct. However, this vote here allows us the opportunity not to have to pass that. So I will support on that basis, I will support the move to the September date, but I cannot support the 2024 January date.
I think probably what's a little perplexing, and I'm to be clear, I'm still requesting to hear from Chairman Austin. So hopefully, Mayor, if you'll grant that, I'm still requesting from the chairman.
I don't have a problem with granting that, but the liaisons to the board are here and are speaking on behalf of the board. But if there's no objection, I don't have a problem with hearing it.
Yeah, I love to hear from Chairman Austin. Chairman Austin, if you don't mind. And as he walks up, I think the point I keep hearing is that like this body of government ought to be the ones to be able to speak to what comes out of the report. We're about to enact a study that's going to be huge that won't be completed for 1.5 years until after the study's done. And a whole different body of government is going to be the ones to speak to that study. And it happens so much that I cannot understand. I mean, is this a special case for some of us where we like to speak on the one thing and rush something? Because we constantly talk about rushing things, right? Like when this was actually voted on, my memory is not short enough to where I can't recall that everyone who voted against it was because they thought we needed more time to even vote to enact this commission. Now it's saying we'll move it up faster. And I cannot for the life of me understand why anyone who supports this work being done thoroughly would try to handcuff them with 4 less months when if it gets done in September, it's done in September. Otherwise, give them the time they need. So I'd love to hear from Chairman Austin.
Well, before I recognize him, what I would say in response to that is, first of all, this commission was created with an end date, a certain end date that was June 2nd. So we're not taking time away from them by granting an extension. We're extending either 3 months or 7 months. We're not taking time away from them at all. This is a question of how much additional time we're going to give them. When we knew last June or May, whenever we approved it, that the date certain to complete their work was 1 year. So we're not taking any time away from them. the question is only how much more time we're going to give. So Chairman Austin, I'll recognize you, and I think what Councilman Jefferson is seeking, and if I say it incorrectly, Councilman Jefferson, you correct me, is he wants to know what the commission's justification is for asking for the January 2024 extension.
Well, first of all, good evening, everyone. The answer is simple, that we knew we needed to ask for an extension. And we set the date out far enough that we knew by the end date, January, that we would have it done by that time. But we also recognize that we have the option of completing it earlier. We just didn't want to come back in August, September, and ask for another extension. So the January date was just to assure us that we have enough time for our selected content experts to thoroughly do their job, knowing that you can always present it early. We just didn't want to come back and make another ask to extend it. So that was purely why we chose January. We also know elections were happening during that time. December, you may pass it, you may not. So we were looking at all those factors when we established that January date.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Can I ask a question before you leave? Would you prefer the January date or the September date? Hearing what we've said, would you still prefer January?
For the reason that I gave, I would prefer the January date with the understanding that if we complete it in September, we will certainly do that. It was just simply so we wouldn't have to come back and ask for another extension if we found ourselves in that position.
Thank you. I'll vote for what you asked for. Thank you.
Okay, has everyone been heard on the substitute motion who'd like to be heard?
I'll just say before the vote that I appreciate the thought process that the chairman shared with us. I would extend it back from the other side and let the commission and the liaisons know that I have no problem with you coming back in September and letting us know that you weren't able to do what was asked for in the substitute motion.
Okay, so just to make sure we know we're all on the same page, the substitute motion was to grant an extension of time through September 18th, 2023 for the report from the One High Point Commission. Sounds like we're pretty divided, so what I'm going to do in interest of our clerk not getting too confused is I'm going to call the roll for a vote, okay? Councilman Holmes, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilman Johnson?
Nay.
Councilman Moore?
Aye.
Councilwoman Peters?
Aye.
Councilman Williams?
Aye.
Councilman Hudson?
No.
Councilman Jones?
Aye.
And Councilman Jefferson?
No.
And I am an aye. I believe that is 6-3 in favor of the substitute motion to extend through September 18th. Okay. Seeing as how the substitute motion is passed, the original motion is now moot. So we will move on. Councilman Moore, do you have anything else from finance?
I think I took up enough time.
All right. Community Development Committee, Councilman Williams.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight, we have 3 items under the consent agenda. But before we're making the motion to approve, we have 2 items, both are demolition orders, and the addresses are 1205 Bradshaw and 2321 Brentwood Street. I would like to ask, is there anyone here to speak for or against these 2 items? If you would stand and be recognized. Give your name and address at the podium, and then share what item you want to ask or discuss.
Hi, I am Tiffany Thomas for 2321 Brentwood. And I have been in contact with Richard. He's been very helpful in the process to let me know what you all were considering doing with the property. I have spoken with a demolition company myself. We are in the process of him coming in and getting proper permits and looking at asbestos to go ahead and get it demoed.
Okay,
Are you the owner of the property?
Yes.
all right. Any other questions for the? So I guess in this, I'll lean on staff for recommendations in this item.
So, good evening, Mayor, City Council, City Manager. I did not get a chance to return her call this afternoon and talk to her about her, so we have two different things we can do. We can put it in pending and for 30 days and allow me to talk with her, review everything, and allow her an opportunity and extension to work it out with the demolition contractor if that's her final decision. Is that your final decision? You're just going to demolish it, or are you just weighing your options of repair versus?
So we have spoken with the contractor to see about repair, and I'm just getting the cost from the demolition team to see which is more feasible.
Okay, so we can put it in pending for 30 days and we can see what she comes back with, or you can pass the ordinance. And if she moves forward with demolition, we'll allow her and work with her time to get it done. And if she then decides she wants to go with the repair, we could have her do the agreement that legal had approved for us a few months ago, where she would just be on a time frame. She would have to agree to that time frame and make those repairs.
If we put it in pending, would that be like the second meeting in February?
I would, yes, in February, and I'd report back what we found and what was discovered and what agreement was made.
Is there any questions to staff concerning that? Because I'm going to make a motion to approve moving this item into pending.
I have a question for the owner, the contractor. You say you're in touch with them. Are y'all scheduled? Have they been to the property, or you're just talking at this point?
No, he's been out to the property and he's looking to make sure there's no asbestos and then
Okay.
give me a complete quote on what it would cost.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? I don't have the item number in front of me, so I just, okay. So, excuse me, I make the motion to move item 2023-001 into pending.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve that item, or to place that item into pending. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes, and that item is now in pending.
All right, thank you. Then nothing else. Is there anyone here to speak on that item or 1205 Bradshaw? All right. See, there's none else. I'll make the motion to approve the remainder of the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay. There's a motion and a second to approve the remainder of the consent agenda items. Is there any discussion on those items? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion is approved unanimously.
That's all I have now.
Okay. Next on the agenda is Councilmember Hudson and our Prosperity and Livability Committee items.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe, Rebecca, would you like to present to us? Would you like me to present for you, or do you want to?
We'd rather hear.
You're already standing up, and you probably speak better than I do.
We'd rather hear from her, Councilman Hudson.
I did add a lot of color to this presentation, so let's take a look. Thank you so much for your time this evening. I appreciate it.
So while we're waiting, I'll fill the audience in. This is a resolution for High Point to join Bee City USA, which is not actually supporting bees, it's supporting everything that supports bees. So reducing pesticides and increasing native plants, et cetera. Go ahead.
That's right. Thank you so much. Thank you for hearing me this evening. So I wanted to, as He just said, this is not about a swarm of bees coming to High Point, and this is actually about supporting pollinators. And so that is just a wonderful thing to do because we actually have wonderful, and a lot of them, community gardens here in High Point, as we were talking about growing High Point earlier. So why Bee City? So I won't read all of this, but a lot of people don't realize that if you have 3 things on a plate of food that you're eating, one of those things has been supported by a pollinator. We need pollinators to keep our gardens going and to keep our food supply going. And so when we support Bee City, we're actually not, we will be supporting honeybees, but we're actually supporting native bees. And so what we want to do is make sure that we have the flowers, the native plants, and everything that they need to keep going. Okay. Benefits. When we build a pollinator-friendly community, it boosts the efforts all over North Carolina and nationally and worldwide, additionally. It supports the growth of local business, including landscapers, and we can bring our community together with this positive initiative. Additionally, Keep High Point Beautiful already has programming. We go out into the community. We would just incorporate this into what we already do. So for us, it would be really easy and painless. We hope to raise community awareness about why pollinators are so important. And again, this partners us with those like Growing High Point and others that are already doing wonderful things. And the way we can help is we would just strive to use fewer pesticides when possible and work together to make the environment better. I will say that Bee City, what they do is they want cities to work towards this, but not under some rules that we can't achieve. It has to be workable for our city with our labor force, but also with our finances and in every way. So they wouldn't come in and say, well, you're out because you didn't do this or didn't do that. They want to work with us. So okay, so the first thing, we're actually doing the steps now, forming a committee under Keep High Point Beautiful, but asking others to join that committee would be a huge step. But we have such a wonderful community that does support pollinators already. That's going to be a very easy thing. We're already formed under Keep High Point Beautiful, and we would also operate under the Public Services Department, which is another requirement. And then Bee City has done just a fantastic job of setting this up. They made it easy. So, we can fill out the paperwork. It is a fee of $500, which is in the public services budget, and that won't be a problem financially. We will have to purchase a sign, but the city sign shop should be able to provide that at very low cost. And then again, as I mentioned, we'll just incorporate it into the things we already do, our presentations and educations that we're already doing as Keep High Point Beautiful. And that's it. That was a pretty short and sweet, but I hope that you would be able to support us with this.
Thank you. Any questions on this?
Yeah, I know there was a study a few years ago that talked about public wildflowers and
Yes.
and stuff like that to attract pollinators back. Or do you guys have plans to have a strategy of attraction for pollinators?
Well, so we already work with DOT probably about 5 or 6 years ago. In talking with them, we said we're not seeing many of those beautiful flowers on our highways. So probably about 5 or 6 years ago, they planted more beds. That was along 85. It's not called 85 anymore, I don't think. But and so we're going to continue to work with DOT, and we'll continue to talk with Parks and Rec about what we can do. Of course, we have the Piedmont Environmental Center, which they have a native pollinator plant sale every year. And so we're just so well set up, sir, that I think this will be easy to just continue what so many people are doing. Thank you.
Absolutely.
I just got a short comment. I've been told and tested that consuming local honey helps with sinuses. So I'm all in support.
This does help support so this won't be for beekeeping, but it will be, it does also support the honeybee, so.
I'll say one thing too. Since I've been on council, we've talked about horses and cows. We've talked about potbelly pigs.
Chicken.
We've talked about, we've talked about goats and a lot about dogs. And we've talked about roosters and we've talked about chickens, right? Yep. So we've talked about the birds and now we've talked about bees.
The flowers in the trees.
The flowers in the trees.
So this kind of.
We've come full circle?
Yeah, we're kind of coming full circle, but I'm happy to support it.
We're definitely willing to address the tough issues there.
It's tough issues. That's right. That's right.
Anything else for Rebecca? If not, before I make a motion, I will say, working with this, speaking with Robbie Stone and with Lee Tillery, so much of what we do in the city, we already have our eyes on this. They're very aware, of limiting pesticides, limiting what we do that impacts, not only what we do that impacts, but positively as well. So there are talks of putting more pollen creating native plants in our rights of way, and using that as much as we can. So thank you. They're already doing fantastic work. So with that, I will make a motion to approve this resolution.
Second.
There's a motion to approve and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously.
That's all from Prosperity and Livability, Mr. Mayor.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rebecca.
All right, so we'll now move to the planning and development items. There are two items. One is a resolution of intent, and the other one is an initiation of some zoning map amendments. The first item, this is a resolution of intent for annexation case 22-07. This is a voluntary, non-contiguous annexation for 11.14 acres northeast of the intersection of NC 66 and westbound I-74. It is actually two parcels in Forsyth County, and I move for approval of that resolution of intent. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Next is the initiation of zoning map amendments. This is our, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Herb, this is our continuing saga of updating our zoning based on the zoning ordinance changes.
Yes.
And so this, I believe, is our fifth round of properties, and I'll make a motion for approval of initiating those zoning map amendments.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion passes. There is an item in pending that I believe the folks are also requesting another extension. Herb, could you just give us a little bit of info on that?
Yes, Herb Shannon, Senior Planner with the Planning and Development Department. At your December public hearing, zoning map amendment case 22-24 was brought before you. This is for a 3.5 acre parcel along NC 68 south of Willowdairy Road. The applicant at that time requested continuation to your meeting this evening. They have requested another continuation to the February 20th meeting, as they're still finalizing their due diligence for a possible purchase of the property. So they have requested continuance to February 20th for zoning case 22-24.
Okay. Now, I'll ask our attorney. This was placed in pending for a date certain, which was tonight. Is this something we could just not take action on and leave in pending, or since it was a date certain, do we need to actually vote to continue it?
Vote on the next date certain that you're moving it.
Okay. All right, so then I'll make a motion then to move it to our February, to leave it in pending and move it to our agenda on February 20th. Is there a second?
Second. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question.
Okay.
Mr. Shannon, as I look at the site map, is this, it doesn't look like that it's necessarily got road frontage, as I'm looking at it, I should know exactly where this is. Is this behind the nursery?
No, it's further south. There is an existing access easement from, if you're familiar, at the intersection of NC 68 and Willard Dairy, you have the former location of Capper's Deli, you have a
Yep,
business park.
yep.
It's right behind there.
And the urgent care?
Yes, and with the
Okay.
development of that business park, there is already an existing access easement in place.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else like to be heard on that item? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approval of the motion, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion passes. We have several items on for public hearing. Thanks for those people who were patient and stayed around. First item is High Point Bowman LLC. This is annexation case 22-06. Mr. Shannon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Annexation case 22-06. The applicant is requesting annexation to have access to city utilities to facilitate the development of a residential subdivision. This property is located in the southeastern portion of the city's planning area, approximately 2,400 feet east of the intersection of Baker Road and Townsend Avenue, directly south of I-74. And this annexation site is for 17.8 acres. If approved, the annexation site will be part of a larger development where the applicant is proposing a 106-unit single-family subdivision. As you can see from the map in front of you, the site abuts the city limits to the west and to the south. And it's pretty much surrounded by the city's corporate limits. There are already existing service vehicles that travel along Baker Road to the west and East Springfield Road to the south, and city utilities are already present in this area. This annexation petition represents a logical progression of the city's annexation policy, and staff is recommending approval. Are there any questions on this proposal?
Any questions for staff? Thank you, Mr. Shannon. Okay, public hearing on this item is open. There's one person, Katie Bradley, who asked to be heard on this item. Could you come up to the lectern, please? Sorry. So you're here on behalf of the applicant?
Yes,
Okay.
I'm Katie Bradley with Timmons Group, the engineering company, representing High Point Bowman LLC, and I'm just available for questions.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Yep. Is there anyone else who would like to be heard on this item? Okay, seeing none, I will close public hearing. I will make a motion to approve this annexation.
Second.
Okay. So a motion and a second to approve the annexation. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously.
Welcome to Ward 3.
Next item is zoning map amendment 22-26. This is Bricks and Beams LLC, and I believe we may be looking to continue this one. Is this one of our-
Yes, the applicant had a conflict and is requesting continuation to the February 20th city council meeting.
Mr. Irby, I think you're here on their behalf.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, good evening. I'm here out of an abundance of caution to the extent that the council did not want to grant the continuance. Beth Kuntz, an attorney in my office, I'm sorry, I'm an attorney at Roberson Hayworth. Beth Kuntz, an attorney in my office, has a unique history specifically with this property. I think her father grew up minutes from it, and she wanted to speak to the council about this particular project. Thank you.
Okay, then I will make a motion to continue zoning map amendment case 22-26 through our February 20th meeting.
Second.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of approval of that motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Next is zoning map amendment case 22-27. This is Price Nursery, Richard Price.
Yes, this is a request to...
Public hearing's open.
Oh, thank you. Sorry about that. This is a request to rezone 4 parcels totaling about 0.8 acres from the residential single-family 5 to the general business district. The site's located along the south side of Scott Avenue, west of North Main Street. Currently developed with 4 single-family dwellings. The applicant owns the abutting property to the south and west. That's a former Price commercial development. That site is now vacant. They've requested rezoning in order to add these 4 parcels to the abutting site that fronts along Westchester Drive in order to create a more usable square parcel. That current configuration of the site, it can be developed, but with the inclusion of these 4 parcels, a more usable development and multiple developments could be placed upon the site. This block, basically west of North Main Street between Paris Avenue and Westchester Drive, it was formerly a residential neighborhood, but beginning in the 1980s, there were a series of zoning requests, and by 2000, almost all of this area was rezoned and redeveloped for commercial use. As part of the land use plan update in 2000, with all the zonings that have occurred, the land use plan was amended to change this area to community regional commercial. That's the area you see highlighted in red, where this was previously highlighted in yellow for residential. With all those zoning changes that occurred over the years, the land use plan was changed to reflect the manner in which that area is being used. Under this proposal, the applicant is requesting rezoning to the general business district to allow these 4 lots to be purchased by the applicant and incorporated into a budding site for commercial development. Staff has no objections to this request, and we're recommending approval. The Planning and Zoning Commission reviewed this proposal at their December public hearing and recommended approval. I would note, as this area has changed, there was a policy set in 2006 from council that if those residential areas are changed, you have this 4 block here and 3 lots here and lots off of Paris, that all of them should happen together so you don't have one parcel left out that is unusable. And this request is meeting that policy. You do have that R5 area to the south, and under your previous action, that's going to be an area that staff will be looking to bring forward to council under the next round of the comprehensive zoning map amendment project. But in regards to this request, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval. They include the consistency statement that is part of your staff report for your consideration. Are there any questions of staff regarding this application?
Thank you, Mr. Shannon. Is there anyone here on behalf of the applicant? Ms. Stalder, you're so patient.
Thank you. My name is Judy Stalder, 3735 Admiral Drive here in High Point. The applicant is Richard Price of Price Nursery, but also Mrs. Carolyn Askew is an applicant. Her property is the second one from the east. And Mr. Jerry Robbins, who also owns the property where Auto Bell is now, are all part of this. The neighbors here are working together to get all of these properties at a consistent zoning so the entire property can be marketed for future development.
Any questions for the applicant? Thank you, Ms. Stalder.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else here who would like to be heard on this item? Okay. Seeing none, I will make a motion for approval of this item, and I will state that the approval of this item is consistent with the city's adopted plans, and that it is reasonable in the public interest for the reasons stated in the staff report and by the Planning and Zoning Commission. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of approval, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? Okay, that motion passes unanimously. Next is City of High Point Plan Amendment 22-06. Mr. Piper.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. Andy Piper, Senior Planner with the Planning and Development Department. This will be a joint presentation of Land Use Plan Amendment Case 22-06 and Zoning Map Amendment 22-28. I'll present the plan amendment, and then Mr. Shannon will follow with the zoning case. But the 2 cases will need to be voted on separately. Just to orient everyone to the location, the request for the plan amendment is to amend multiple areas of the land use plan along East Lexington Avenue, Greensboro Road, and the new Jamestown bypass in accordance with recommendations of the Jamestown bypass land use assessment that was adopted in May 2021. The land use plan is a policy document that makes recommendations on potential future uses based on goals and policies. These proposed plan amendments do not change the zoning, and there are no pending or planned developments in any of these areas at this time. So looking at the overall map for the plan amendment, what you'll see are the areas in the dashed black lines are the areas, and they have been divided into 4 separate areas that we've labeled A, B, C, and D, going from west to east. Focusing on the first 2 areas, areas A and B. Okay, so area A is along East Lexington Avenue and Greensboro Road, just west of I-74, and is known generally as the 5 Points area. It consists of approximately 19 acres with 22 parcels. The US 311 bypass interchange study and the Core City Plan identify this area as a mixed-use area that could serve both nearby residents and those traveling along I-74. The recommendation is for this to be amended from a local convenience commercial, which is indicated there, to a mixed-use development to expand the existing mixed-use development classification that currently exists on the west side of the I-74 interchange. Area B is located east of I-74 along Greensboro Road and the Jamestown bypass, and it's actually been divided into 5 sub-areas, which I'm going to try to cover here quickly. Area B1 is located east of Spencer Street, south of Sterling Avenue, and west of Hampton Drive, on the north side of the old, now dead-end portion of Greensboro Road that was recently renamed McDonald Court. It consists of 9 parcels totaling approximately 10 acres. This area has mostly undeveloped lots with 3 unopened right-of-ways that are surrounded by single-family residences that could offer an opportunity for infill residential. This area is currently designated low-density residential, which supports single-family detached dwellings on individual lots. With some land assembly and access to the dead-end section of McDonald Court, this area could support some infill housing with a variety of detached or attached homes. Area B1 is recommended to be amended from low-density residential to medium-density residential, which would support a variety of housing with a density between 8 and 16 dwelling units per acre. Area B2 is located along both sides of the bypass between I-74 and just east of the recently aligned new section of Greensboro Road. It consists of 37 parcels that total approximately 45 acres. The area has a mix of commercial and service uses, including a former gas station, a self-storage facility, a construction office, and drive-through restaurant, as well as some vacant buildings. There's an unopened right-of-way that extends from McDonald Court into Area B1 that could be used for access to the recommended infill housing. This area is currently designated Community Regional Commercial, which supports commercial, retail, and service uses intended to serve the entire community and nearby regional customers. Due to the reconfiguration of the roads and the narrow lot depth along McDonald Court, Area B2 is recommended to be amended from Community Regional Commercial to Local Convenience Commercial. Area B3 is located on the south side of the bypass between Enterprise Drive and just west of the southern section of Ring Street. It contains 3 parcels of approximately 17 acres. There's a new signal at the T intersection where Greensboro Road has been realigned to intersect with the bypass. There is also an 80-foot wide break in the controlled access along the bypass to allow access to the undeveloped land on the south side. This could be an opportunity for development of shopping center with a cohesive mix of commercial uses, such as possibly a hotel and higher density housing. This area is currently designated Community Regional Commercial and is recommended to be amended to mixed-use development. B4 is located on the north side of the bypass along the northern section of Old Ring Street, which has been renamed Graham Court. It contains 8 parcels of approximately 8 acres. This northern section of Graham Court does not connect to the bypass. The area includes a mix of commercial and office uses, some of which appear to be vacant, and some undeveloped lots. An expansion of the local convenience commercial designation that runs along Greensboro Road is recommended. It is currently designated low-density residential and would be amended, as I just said, to local convenience commercial. Area B5 is located on the south side of the bypass along the southern portion of Ring Street. It contains 16 parcels that total approximately 20 acres. The bypass has a median at the intersection with the southern portion of Ring Street, which restricts turning movements to right turns onto and off of the bypass. This area has become an isolated pocket that has some single-family homes and some undeveloped parcels. If combined with Area B3, this area could allow for an expansion and second access into the mixed-use development that is recommended in Area B3. This area is currently designated low-density residential and is recommended to be amended to mixed-use development. So that is areas A and B. Next, moving further to the east, closer to Jamestown, is area C1, located south of the bypass between North Scientific Street and the railroad tracks. It contains 8 parcels of approximately 38 acres. This area is currently a mix of residential and 2 industrial uses that have become somewhat isolated from the industrial uses located on the north side of the bypass. The area has potential for redevelopment due to the new signalized intersection with the bypass, its proximity to the new Wren Farm residential subdivision located diagonally across the intersection, and its adjacency to other neighborhoods to the west. The area is currently designated as light industrial and is recommended to be amended to medium-density residential to support a mix of higher-density housing at 8 to 16 dwelling units per acre. This area is subject of the recommended zoning map amendment that Mr. Shannon will present next. Area C2, located also on the south of the bypass along the east side of the railroad tracks, contains 9 parcels totaling approximately 26 acres. The area is currently undeveloped except for one small office on South Scientific Street in between the railroads and the unopened right-of-way. The area is constrained by lack of access, rough topography, and a perennial stream. Due to the constraints, the light industrial designation is recommended to be amended to a low-density residential of up to 5 dwelling units per acre. This area is also the subject of a second recommended zoning map amendment that you'll hear about soon. And then finally, Area D is located south of the bypass along the east and west sides of Dillon Road. It contains 31 parcels that total approximately 80 acres. The area is outside the corporate limits. However, the area on the west side of Dillon Road is within the city's extraterritorial jurisdiction. The area has some undeveloped parcels and parcels with single-family residential lots on large lots. Given the proximity to the bypass and the signalized intersection, the area has potential for higher density development such as twin homes, townhomes, or multifamily. The land use classification is recommended to be amended from low density residential to medium density residential to support higher density residential development of 8 to 16 dwelling units per acre. So looking at the relevant policies that support the recommended amendments, there are numerous plans and policies that are relevant and supportive of the request. The Community Growth Vision Statement, the Land Use Plan, US 311 Bypass Interchange Study, and the Core City Plan, as well as the Jamestown Bypass Land Use Assessment, which was, as I mentioned, approved back in 2021, was conducted to evaluate impacts of the new roadway, examine existing land uses, assess water and sewer availability, and provide policy guidance for potential future development. The assessment recommends that when new development occurs, lots should be consolidated to maximize the size of the development and limit access points, that the more intense commercial uses and higher density housing opportunities should be clustered close to I-74 Jamestown Bypass Interchange, that areas further to the east along the bypass offer opportunities for a mix of housing types, including single-family, townhomes, condos, and possibly some apartments. And finally, it recommended the land use plan amendments that I've just presented. So in closing, I'll add that due to this significant road construction project, opportunities have been opened up for this area to transition and grow. By recommending these land use plan amendments, the city is trying to remove any potential barriers to development and give an update to the growth policy direction leading into the creation of a new comprehensive plan for the city. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the request, and because it is aligned with the recommendations of the Jamestown Bypass Land Use Assessment, and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the land use plan amendment by a vote of 6-0. I know that was a lot, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Piper, I have one, well, maybe 3 questions. The area B2, I guess it is, The change from community regional commercial to local convenience commercial, what uses will now be non-compliant under the land use plan by making that change? It's a change from a more intensive use to a less intensive use, wouldn't you say?
So we're talking about B2.
The change from community regional commercial to local convenience commercial to 45 acres?
Correct. So again, the zoning would be more, telling as far as what is no longer allowed, but.
Well, I know, but if somebody comes in and wants to make a change that is really a regional commercial type of change, they're going to have to ask for a land use plan amendment in addition to the zoning, right? So what are we making non-compliant there? What bigger things are we making non-compliant? I guess is my question, and Herb, maybe you can jump in.
So typically with the community regional commercial, you're looking at larger scale shopping center, big box, hotel, potentially.
Hotel would not fit within local convenience commercial without a land use plan change?
Well, I guess, we'd have to look at each as they come in. And again, I will say that the comprehensive plan is going to be looking at these land use designations. And so that would depend somewhat on the outcome of that and what the different categories are at that point.
Okay. All right, and then I guess my next questions are, I guess it's B3 and the change to mixed use. Oh, sorry.
B3 and B5.
B5.
Mm-hmm.
My vision of mixed use is, residential on top of commercial or, very walkable. Is this the right place for that up against an interstate?
Well, I think if you look at and I'm flipping,
I know it's on the other side too, but.
Right, so the mixed use could be a mix of also what I would call horizontal mixed use, not just the vertical mixed use that you're envisioning, I think. So this could be a mix of uses, not necessarily a walkable.
Like an iMud type of thing?
Just a mix of use, yes.
Yeah.
Not necessarily within an iMUD, but yes, a mix of uses in close proximity.
I like to call this multiple use.
Multiple use, yeah.
But anyway, I know that's not part of our statute, but okay, I see.
But again, that could be something we look at during the comprehensive plan, refining those.
Okay, all right, those are my two or three, however many it was, questions. Anyone else have questions for Mr. Piper? Because I think we're going to hear a zoning part of this as well before we actually vote, correct?
Correct.
All right. Anybody else have questions? Mr. Piper? Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll go on to the zoning portion of this, and Herb, we'll hear from you.
Yes, the zoning portion of this presentation, zoning case 22-28, it focuses on Area C from Andy's presentation. One of the many policy actions from the bypass study was for council to examine the zoning of that Area C, specifically land lying south of the Jamestown bypass abutting the Southern Railroad corridor. This area has been divided into two tracks, Track 1 and Track 2, for your discussion. Track 1 consists of approximately 18 acres lying south of the bypass along the east side of North Scientific Street. The zoning proposals are rezoned from heavy industrial and light industrial to the R5 district. Track 2, that area in the red shading, is approximately 56 acres located south and east of the railroad corridor, and the proposals are rezoned from the light industrial district to the R3 district. In regards to Track 1, that area is mostly developed with an industrial use. You have Glover grading, and there's also outdoor storage of bulk materials. The primary concern was not so much the existing industrial uses on that property, is that the industrial zoning could potentially allow for higher intensity uses or developments that may not be compatible with the adjacent residential neighborhood along the opposite side of North Scientific Street. At the December Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing, there were several speakers in opposition to the rezoning of Tract 1. Those speakers expressed concerns that the LI and HI zoning has been there for several decades, and that rezoning to the residential single-family 5 district would limit growth options of the existing grading business and would make that use non-conforming. One of the speakers, the current owner, noted that he is working on a potential sale of that business, and both the owner and the proposed buyers had concerns that zoning may limit expansion opportunities and there may be some unintended consequences. The Planning and Zoning Commission, based upon those comments, recommend denial at their December meeting for rezoning of Tract 1. Their recommendation was that that portion of the zoning case be denied, and that the commission also recommended that Tract 1 be omitted from the zoning case. And I would note that staff would have no objections to that recommendation. In regards to Tract 2, that's the area highlighted in red. There's proposal to rezone that to from light industrial to the residential single-family district. About 24 acres of that area is owned by the city. That speckled, spotted designation, those are the parcels that are owned by the city. There are various environmental features that would make development of that area for industrial very difficult. Mainly, there's a perennial stream, a wide flood zone area, and steep terrain. And the R3 zoning is proposed as that would be consistent to the abutting zoning that's applied just east of this area. At the December P&Z meeting, there were questions from neighbors in that abutting subdivision to the south. They wanted to know, was this zoning based upon any proposed immediate development? And staff had noted there is no immediate development proposed. And there was also some questions about would their neighborhood be used for access? There were specific concerns about that parcel, 215 Brookview Court, that's where the arrow is pointed to. That's a parcel that the neighbors thought, could that be used for access to the zoning site and their neighborhood becoming a cut through? Staff had noted that that parcel is owned by the city, but if the city were to sell it, it would be difficult for that to be an access point due to the fact you have a perennial stream right behind it in a very wide flood zone area. This is the topography map of that area, and that arrow highlights the site in question. If you were going to use that for access, you would have to cross a perennial stream and a flood zone area that is over 300 feet wide. More convenient access is available from Scientific Street or Dillon Road to the east. So in summary, regarding Tract 1, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends denial and that it be omitted from the request. Staff has no objection to that recommendation. Tract 2, the commission recommended approval to rezone that area from the LI to the R3 district, and included in your staff report is a consistency statement and reasonableness statement that's being forwarded to you from the Planning and Zoning Commission for your consideration. That concludes the zoning portion of this request. Are there any questions of Andy or myself regarding the plan amendment or rezoning application?
Anyone have questions?
Yes, Mr. Shannon. So my understanding, or make sure that I understand, that the one tract you have gone back and allowed the amendment of denial from P&Z and changed that one portion. I think the company was Glover Grading, so you took that section out, correct?
Well, that is still part of the request. What staff is noting is that Planning and Zoning Commission recommended denial, and they recommended that it be omitted, that you remove it from the request altogether, and staff has no objections to that. The second part of that is the rezoning of Tract 2. So that is what's being proposed for you today. Removal of Tract 1, leave the zoning as is, and only rezone Tract 2.
Okay. I'm still hung up on one thing from the land use plan amendment. This city's in dire need of modern hotel rooms. If somebody wants to come and build a hotel, a 150-room Hampton Inn at I-74 and the Jamestown bypass in that 45 acres, are they going to have to ask for a land use plan amendment to do that?
I don't believe a land use plan amendment would be necessary. I think the land use plan amendment, and Andy could elaborate on this, looks at the fact that with that widening and the way the streets cars up that area, you can really no longer do large 30, 40 acre tracts.
Okay.
You're going to have smaller development, and under the various zoning district options GB, you can still do a hotel. It just reflects the fact you're going to have smaller parcels, not huge 30, 40 acre tracts of development.
Okay, that makes me happy. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions?
A question for Madam Attorney. One of the companies I own, specifically the limousine company, is right there in B2. I don't see this affecting me one way or the other, but would it be smart to get recused from this vote? We don't own the property, we just lease.
In track 1 or track 2?
Well, if we go back to those other slides, it was B2, specifically right there off of Greensboro Road. This was the other slide. Yeah, right there in that B2 area. So my limo company's right in there. So I just don't want anybody to question anything. Yeah. So someone else needs to make the motion to accuse me. Okay.
Okay, I'll make the motion that Councilman Jones be excused from voting on the land use plan amendment.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to excuse Councilman Jones. Any comment on the motion? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously. And he's
Madam Attorney, should the same thing be done if my residence is in the zone?
I'm sorry,
Your residence is within one of the zones that you're looking at?
Yeah, it's right inside this boundary, right off of Greensboro Road.
And I would say yes as well.
okay. Will someone?
I'll make a motion to recuse Councilmember Jefferson from this vote.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to excuse Councilman Jefferson from voting on just the land use plan amendment.
Is that correct?
Is that correct? Or are you within the zoning area, Councilman Jefferson?
Yeah, I'm right here.
You're in the zoning?
Are you in the zoning?
Are you affected by the zoning case or just the land use plan? I want to make sure we.
The one you're pointing at, land use plan.
Okay.
I'm not inside the zoning area, but I'm right inside the land use plan.
Okay, all right. So the motion is to excuse him from the voting on the land use plan amendment, and there's a second for that motion. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously. All right, so then there were 7. I will make a motion for approval. Do I have to do consistency for the land use plan amendment too? I didn't think so. Oh, that's a good point. So the public hearing is open for the land use plan amendment and the zoning case. We're going to vote on them separately. Is there anyone present who would like to be heard on either one of these cases? Okay. Just come up, please come to the lectern, give us your name and address. We got to make sure you're heard. Thanks. You want to go first? Okay.
Kenneth Irvin, 300 North Scientific Street. I am in favor of removing our parcels from the amendment, or from the recommendation. From the track, that's track 1.
Track 1.
Yes.
Okay.
And if approved, Mr. Shannon, that's what it does, correct?
Yes, it would, that would not be rezoned.
Correct. Thank you, just double
Thanks.
confirming.
Yes, sir.
I'm Richard Glover. I'm one of the owners of Track 1. We would like to urge that this be accepted and removed. And if anybody has any questions, perhaps I have some other points that I could add in addition to those that Mr. Shannon gave. But we urge you, please leave us out.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Glover.
Thank you for
Anyone else
operating.
like to be heard? Yes. Got one more coming.
My name is Michael Whitfield, 210 Brookview Circle. I was here in December for the rezoning meeting, and I would like to oppose the recommendation to change the Track 2.
Okay.
I live on Brookview Circle, and I've been there for 27 years. So I'm just seeing a lot of change in the neighborhood, and that concerns me. So if you don't remember anything that I say, you know, looks like me they're trying to build houses on the railroad track. So that's what's going down. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else like to be heard on this item? Okay. Then I'm going to make the motion to approve the land use plan amendment 22-06. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion on that motion? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there anyone opposed? And that motion passes unanimously. And now that our two folks are back for the next vote.
Staff just wants to remind you that if you do elect to remove track 1, you need to specifically note that so it's on the record, and then your consistency statement will be specifically for track 2.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Shane. Okay, to begin our discussion, I will make a motion for approval of zoning map amendment 22-28 with the only approving the rezoning for track 2, specifically exempting track 1 from that motion, and I will state that the approval of the zoning matter or zoning case is reasonable in the public interest and is consistent with our adopted plans for the reasons stated in the staff report.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Question. Councilman Jefferson's home is outside of the zoning, but my business is within the zoning, right?
Are you within that?
So this particular one, no, okay, so the other one, that was a
Yeah, we're just doing that part C.
All right, just making sure.
Actually, we're doing part of part C.
Part C.
Yeah, the pink or orange or whatever that color is.
All right, yeah.
Coral.
Coral. Okay. We can debate whether that's a color later.
Lawyers like that.
Any other discussion on the motion?
I have a question. Mr. Whitfield, you said that they were, in your words, building houses on the railroad track. Is that accurate from what you said? Could you elaborate? Because I'm imagining that picture, and and I can't really wrap my head around what that actually looks like.
If you look at the circle, I'm kind of
No, it's not.
right in the center. I'm on the inside of the circle. And my neighbors, they live right across the street. And right behind them is the railroad track. I can look at the train out of my window. So there is, I guess there's like a creek that's over there also. So I just can't see it for the life of me.
So the rezoning doesn't mean the houses are going to get built there.
No, and I know that
Somebody could do it without asking for a rezoning.
Right. And so I'm just saying in terms of his concern about, I guess, the proximity to the railroad and I guess the density around the current housing. Any effects? Maybe I'm misunderstanding what the both sides of this issue.
Well, right now, that area could be developed with industrial uses. Now, the environmental constraints would make that difficult, but industrial uses could be developed behind the gentleman's home without any public hearing. Due to the environmental constraints, staff is of the opinion that the area be more appropriate for residential, so we're recommending rezoning to the residential zoning district. Because of the stream, if that area were to develop, you wouldn't have development directly behind those neighbors. You would have the stream buffers and development at the stay out of the flood zone area. So it wouldn't be directly next to those neighbors. It would be near the railroad tracks, but not in the railroad right away. But so staff is recommending rezoning as we're of the opinion residential will be more appropriate in that area than light industrial. and remove a barrier to development because industrial may be difficult trying to do big box industrial for all those environmental constraints.
And so I just want to, just for Mr. Whitfield, just clarification from Mr. Whitfield that light industrial can go in there right now.
Yes.
And so if the choice is between light industrial and residential, the best outcome that staff believes for the current residents is residential versus light industrial.
Yes, and the residential that staff is recommending is the R3 district, which is a single-family zoning district, same as his neighborhood.
Mr. Whitfield, does that clarify? I know that maybe doesn't make you feel any better, but does that clarify what staff, what the zoning is trying to achieve?
It does, but
I know this probably doesn't make you feel any better, but in terms of having an industrial site behind your house versus other homes?
well, it's been classified in its current position for how many years now?
At least since 1992.
Okay.
So that's a good indicator that it's not a very suitable development place in the very near future.
Thank you. So why change it?
Okay, I got it.
I don't think either way, because if it was a developable place, especially during the highs and lows of the building that we've had, it would have probably been targeted by a builder during the good times.
But not residential.
They would come for rezoning if they felt like it was.
It could still end up being something else. They just have to, if it's not going to be single family, they just have to come back and have it rezoned.
Well, you know, like I said, I've been there 27 years and I can see the change.
I understand.
You know, the Jamestown bypass, we got, what is it, Wren development? Things are changing.
Yeah.
So,
I understand. I wasn't trying to make you feel any worse. I'm just letting you.
yeah.
Any other discussion on the motion?
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor of approval of the motion as stated, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously. That is it for the public hearings.
I'd just like to say thank you, if I may, to Mr. Piper and Mr. Shannon for taking up more time tonight than I did. All right, there's two general business items. One is the reinstatement of Alex Moore to the Planning and Zoning Commission. I believe he had been knocked off due to some absences, but we're going to put him back on. Is that right?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is Chris Andrews with the Planning Department. There's certain attendance requirements that are spelled out both in the city ordinance and the rules of procedure, and Mr. Moore had some conflicts this year. But
Okay.
we support his reinstatement.
Thank you. I'll make a motion for approval of that item. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any comment on that motion?
Has anyone spoken to Mr. Moore to see,
What's that?
has anyone spoken to Mr. Moore to see what the conflict was and if that's been resolved?
Yes, Councilmember Jones, we do keep attendance records and discuss, what the cause of the absence was, at least generally, and whether they're excused or unexcused. And so at that point, these were unexcused absences, I believe. So, they're not penalized, but it does count against them. And then a member is not, kicked off the Planning and Zoning Commission. Their voting rights are suspended until this body reinstates them.
So we do feel that he feels comfortable that he can resume his duties as appointed.
Yes, sir.
I kind of have the same questions, that, we do have attendance policies, and we have these policies for a reason, and if we just, this has nothing to do with him, it just happens to be at this time that if we have policies in place and we just blanket excuse the policies, then the policies are useless. So if we don't need the policies, we can remove them, and if we need the policies, we probably should take a deeper dive into, rather than just excusing them.
I mean, I served on P&Z 7 years, and I think it came up a time or two where we had somebody who had a problem, and I think, the memory serves me correct, I think one of them was replaced, and the other one, there was some reason why they had absences, and so whatever that reason was cleared up, and they were able to come back and serve fully. So I don't have a problem with doing it. Obviously, if he violates the policy again, it's going to come back to us. But I do agree with you. Policy's only good if you enforce the policy. I know Alex, and I serve on him with several different boards, and he's a pretty dedicated person. And he's not.
I'm not saying I have anything against him.
Yeah,
These are very sought after board
I
positions.
trust him that if he says he's willing to serve and is able to serve, that he's going to.
Yep.
Good. I'm comfortable with that. All right, any other questions or comments? Okay, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously. Next one is same thing, but it's to the Board of Adjustment. This is Sandra Hayes. It could, since we talked about it, could we talk about?
Certainly, the Board of Adjustment in the calendar year for 2022 only had one meeting, so it's kind of unfair, but at the same time. So Ms. Hayes has served for quite a while, and we support her reinstatement.
So she missed all the meetings last year.
100%.
I don't know if we can reinstate her. All right, I'll make a motion that she be reinstated. Is there a second?
Second.
Any comment on that motion? All right. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Yeah, that motion passes unanimously. We have some minutes. Do we have minutes to be approved? They're normally, oh, yes, we do. We have some from going back to September. Anyone have any comments or changes to the minutes to be approved?
Motion to approve.
There's a motion to approve the minutes and seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Yeah, that motion passes unanimously. I'll just want everybody to know I'm driving up tomorrow morning to attend the U.S. Conference of Mayors meeting. The agenda has some very relevant things that I think may be able to help us here in High Point. So I will see if I can steal some ideas from some other jurisdictions and bring them back. And look forward to going, but it's going to be a long drive. I'm driving instead of flying, so.
Where is it?
D.C.
Okay.
Yay, safe travels.
Well, it started today, but I didn't want to miss this meeting, so I'm leaving bright and early tomorrow morning. But I hope to steal some good ideas.
Mayor Wagner have to vote to reinstate you.
Yeah, that's right.
Mayor Wagner, we wish you safe travels. Also would like to, just in light coming off of MLK Day, I'd like to thank everyone who was involved in making a very, I think, successful MLK weekend here in our city. I know our city staff, city manager, her team, city council members were heavily involved in supporting events. The folks who came out to the parade, thank you all for that, as well as all the other sort of celebrations. Day of service, I think, went very well. The pictures I saw from service projects all over our city at local schools, community gardens, churches, things of that nature, I think are what make our community so awesome that folks are willing to give back. And so just wanted to give a nod to everyone who participated and say thank you so much for loving your city, and loving it so much so that you wouldn't make MLK a day off, but you made it a day on. So thank you.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councilman Holmes, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem. Any last words before we adjourn? All in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? That motion passes unanimously, and we are adjourned.